As the opportunity arises, ICN will provide in-depth special reports. The purpose is to dive into the details of specific subjects critical to Americans. Future special reports include the current financial collapse, effective political participation, and the national debt, just to name a few. Our objective is to provide details not found in the mainstream media on a topic of national importance. We will monitor our comment board for any topic suggestions. Now let's go to the ICN Special Report. This week's special report will be the first in a series to help our viewers understand the ongoing economic collapse. Many continue to struggle to understand the financial problems facing the American economy. Before we can explain how the problems we're facing under the current crisis, the viewer must have an understanding of the meaning of money. You may say that you know what money is, but money is one of the most complicated subjects, even for so-called experts to understand. We will focus on the US dollar and begin with a little history. Did you know that what backs up the US dollar has changed several times in the last 100 years? Before 1933, Americans used gold and silver for money. Printed US dollars called gold certificates could be exchanged for an equal amount of gold at any time and at any bank. America was on the gold standard. But the problem was, we also used fractional reserve banking. This means that a bank could loan out 2.5 times the amount of gold than they had in their vault. When a loan was made before 1933, new dollars were printed without an increase in gold. This means that the banks prior to 1933 were counterfeiting money. Because banks could loan out much more money than they had in gold, and they were allowed to print up gold certificates for these loans, there was no way that all dollars, known as gold certificates, could be exchanged for gold. That scheme worked as long as the depositors didn't withdraw most of the money at the same time. During the financial crisis of the early 1930s, banks began to fail. People were afraid and wanted to take money out of their bank, mostly in the form of gold, before it failed. This is called a run on the bank. Too many people, not enough gold. This problem kept snowballing. Thousands of banks had failed between 1929 and 1933. In March of 1933, President Roosevelt, just 3 weeks in office, closed every bank in the U.S. for 5 days. This was the notorious bank holiday. The fundamental problem was that there were more than twice as many gold certificates issued to Americans as there was gold in the banks. The President solved the problem by issuing Executive Order 6102 on April 5, 1933. Roosevelt claimed that the Trading with the Enemy Act, a law passed 15 years earlier during World War I, gave him authority to require all Americans and only Americans to turn in all of their gold and gold certificates to the nearest Federal Reserve branch. We'll ignore for now the fact that America was not at war in 1933, had no official enemies, and that the President has no authority to confiscate private property without due process. So what did Americans get in exchange for gold and gold certificates? They received the new Federal Reserve notes, essentially the printed money we use today. These dollars can only be exchanged for other dollars. After 1933, it was illegal for Americans to own gold. Foreign holders of U.S. dollars still could exchange their money directly for gold. The purpose was to maintain a gold standard for international trade. This too was a ticking time bomb, because gold, with fractional reserve banking, is unsustainable. By 1971, other countries held more U.S. dollars than the U.S. had in gold. Sound familiar? In '71, President Nixon shocked the world by taking the U.S. off the international gold standard. So not only could Americans no longer use gold for money, but foreign countries could no longer exchange U.S. dollars for gold. One could say that the U.S. went bankrupt in 1933 and again in 1971. In both cases, America could not meet its financial commitments and defaulted. Since 1971, America has been on a total and complete fiat currency. Our money is only money because the U.S. government says so. So how does this information relate to the current financial crisis? You have to understand how our money is created before you can understand how it is used or misused in the economy. When America was on the gold standard, it was harder to create money than it is today, One had to actually mine the gold and bring it into the money supply. With our current fiat monetary system, a bank only has to have a borrower and then punch a couple of keys on the computer to create new money. Today's financial crisis is related to how we create new money. So how is money created today? All money that we currently use today was loaned into existence. Excuse me? That's right. Every time someone takes out a loan, the money supply is increased. Every time someone pays off a loan, the money supply decreases. Since 1971, Americans have moved from saving money each year to where the annual average household saving is negative. Our financial system is based upon debt and borrowing money. When we borrow more money than we can pay back, then the whole global financial system is at risk of collapse. Witness the government's last-minute emergency management during the collapse of Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, and AIG this past year. If any of these companies were allowed to fail without intervention, then the global financial system would have ceased to function. At this point, we've now built a foundation of understanding what money is and how it's created. We are now ready to explain the run-up and causes of our current financial crisis. Look for ICN's next special report in the coming weeks.